Welcome to Blue Talks.
Hello everyone, I'm Jennifer Jayde, and it is my mission to help as many people as possible to uncover and live their purpose full time. About 6 or 7 years ago, I came across a book written by a palliative care nurse. This touched me deeply, and I'll get to that story in a moment. She had been a palliative care nurse for about 8 years, and she started noticing that she was receiving the same type of guidance and words of wisdom from her patients in their final days and their final hours of their life. And she started to write these things down. And the pattern that kept repeating was that there were 5 most common regrets that her patients were sharing with her on their deathbeds. And the number one was what struck me the most. Does anyone here know what that number one is, or can you guess? What would the number one regret that most people would have on their deathbeds be?
They didn't spend enough time with their family.
That was one of them, yeah. So what it was I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself and not the life others expected of me. I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself and not the life others expected of me. Now imagine you are in your final days, final weeks, final moments of your life, and that's what you're thinking about. That's what you're saying to your palliative care nurse. Oh, don't do what I did. Have the courage to live a life true to yourself. It's too late for me. It's not too late for you. This really struck me deeply because for almost all of my life, I had been doing just that. When I was about 4 years old, I started to become consciously aware that my single mom and I didn't have much. And that stressed her out. She had a lot of anxiety. She started having panic attacks. She was a young single mother. And the most vivid early memory that I have were the two of us living in a basement suite together and her crying on the phone to her mother about how she's going to pay the rent this month, how she's going to keep food on the table for us. So being very young and understanding more than I think my mother realized, I made a decision. I made a connection. If this is what it looks like to not have very much money, then if you do have money, you must be the happiest person in the world. And you must be free of worry and free of regret and free of panic and free of these crying phone calls to your mother wondering how you're going to pay your bills. So my mission began. Before I was 5 years old, I started with lemonade stands. And then I thought, what could be better than lemonade stands? Kool-Aid. Does anyone remember Kool-Aid? We used to drink that stuff. Wow. And then I thought, what could be better than Kool-Aid? And like handmade greeting cards. So I started, it was like a white piece of paper folded in half and my little like drawings. And then I thought, what could be better than me making these handmade greeting cards? Oh, I'll enlist an employee. And so my friend at daycare, she started helping me make these handmade greeting cards and we would sell them at the end of her driveway. And then I noticed something amazing. I had a couple of friends that lived a few doors down. They were sisters and they had something called a paper route. So I wanted a paper route. And the newspaper told me I was too young. They wouldn't give me a paper route. So I just practiced with my neighbor friends. And when I was old enough, I got 2. This carried on. I put a ton of pressure on myself to achieve, to excel, to succeed in whatever form was in front of me at that time. So if it's getting good grades, passing those tests, being the top in the class, joining the sports teams, working really hard to be a good player on those sports teams. I did it. And I was overwhelmed most of the time of my life. Getting into grade 11 and 12, we start getting asked, well, what are you going to be when you grow up? You got to start planning your prerequisites to get into the good college, to the universities, to the good jobs. And I'm in grade 11 and 12 thinking, what? I have no idea what I want to do for the rest of my life. I want to do well. I want to succeed. I don't want to worry about money for the rest of my life, but I don't know what I'm going to be. The speaker came into my class in grade 12. Oh, I wish I remember her name because it was a long time since I was in grade 12 now. And I still remember this to this day. She said, if you never had to worry about money again, how would you be spending your time? And I was like, what? Not worry about money? I had never thought that far in advance before. If I never had to worry about money, how would I be spending my time? And I had this light bulb. Oh my gosh, I know what I'm going to be. I love taking pictures. That was my hobby. That was my thing. That's what I would do for fun with my friends all growing up. I had a camera in my hand. We would stage photo shoots together. If I never had to worry about money, I would travel the world and I would take pictures. Well, that's called being a photographer. And I was so excited. I started researching, okay, how do I be a photographer? I could go to the Art Institute. How do you do this? And the next day, I was so excited to tell my friend, one of my closest friends, guess what? I finally know what I'm going to be. I'm going to be a photographer. And he said, and I don't blame him for this, we were just kids, but he said, what? I said, yeah, I'm going to be a photographer. I'm going to take pictures. He said, yeah, have fun being broke for the rest of your life. And I was like, totally deflated. Like I had this whole big balloon of passion and hope, and he just took this little pin and like dashed it in a second. And I take responsibility for believing him, right? That was my biggest insecurity, my biggest fear. I'm like, I don't want to be a starving artist. And I had flashbacks to my mom and the panic, and I was like, no, let's steer clear of that entirely. And so then I became this passive participant in life rather than a deliberate creator. And I stumbled into an entry-level job in finance. And then I stumbled into learning how to do that a little more. And then I stumbled into learning about being a mortgage broker. And 2 weeks before my 22nd birthday, I was a 100% commission-based mortgage broker. I started doing well. It was a good time to be a mortgage broker. That always helps. I had a couple of people in the office helping me. And I started to make more and more money. And for being 24, 25 years old, I was doing quite well. In fact, by the time I was 25, I had ticked off all the boxes, all the markers to success that I thought I needed to finally kick my feet back and enjoy life free of worry, the total opposite of what I remember my mom experiencing when I was little. I had purchased a condo, which turned into a house, which turned into a little sports car. I had the wedding at the castle, had my fur baby. I had tick, 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 tick. And what was so devastating was to realize I wasn't fulfilled at all. I had spent 20 years since the age of 5 to 25 busting my butt, doing all the things I thought I was supposed to do to be happy, putting stress on myself, missing out on doing things with my friends on the weekends because I was working 2 jobs, on the soccer teams, all this stuff, because I just thought it was going to pay off in the end. So it was pretty crushing to kind of think about all the things that I had done, thinking it was going to take me to this pot of gold at the end of the rainbow that wasn't there. Around this time, I received a phone call. It was my mom. She said, this part's tough. She said, "Are you sitting down?" I said, "No." She said, "Well, I have something to tell you." This is one of those times I should have taken my mother's advice, because I didn't sit down and I should have. She said, one of our family members, immediate family member, his name's Dan, he hasn't been feeling so good. He's gone to the doctor, he's gotten some tests. He'll be lucky to see one more year. And I should have listened to my mom, because that's when I fell to my knees for the first time in my life. When Dan passed away 11 months later, it was the biggest wake-up call in my life to start living. Because I realized up until then I had been existing. I had been a passive participant, following one thing into the next. I wasn't paying attention to if I was fulfilled, if it was meaningful to me. I was basically making fear-based decisions, scarcity-based decisions. All of this time, I was being patted on the back for being driven and ambitious, for getting the good grades and having the jobs and doing the things. So I thought I must be doing something right. What I was doing was I was running from fear. I was running from fear of lack and scarcity. I was running from fear of not fitting in. I was running from fear of not being successful. And so I started to do things differently. And I asked myself, Jen, what if this was your last year of your life? I mean, it could be your last 6 months. It could be any of this. Dan was 42 years old when he passed. And he left behind 2 young daughters that were 6 and 8. And I said, you know what? I still want to be a photographer. I still want to take pictures and travel the world. And of course I had the thoughts, well, it's too late. It's too late. You're in your late 20s now. Your life is pretty much over. And, I'm sure, many of us can relate to hearing all the doubtful voices, the inner critic, right? So, but I decided, and this was big. So if you zoned out, I hope you tune in right now. I decided that I would rather get to my deathbed having tried at doing something I loved and failing at it than to never know what could have been. So I bought a camera. I started taking pictures, evenings and weekends. I kept my finance job for a little while. I started photographing my friends again. I would do maternity shoots, boudoir, family, newborn. Before long, people were asking me if they could buy a gift certificate for their friend. I'm like, you want to pay me money to do something I love? It was shocking to me, honestly. It was very shocking to me and uncomfortable even, that someone wanted to pay me to do something that I love so much I would do it for free. In fact, I love photography so much, I wanted to pay people for the privilege of letting me photograph them. That's how much I loved it. So anyway, this snowballed into really wanting to take this serious. I hired mentors. I went to workshops. I started working with some of the top 10 wedding photographers in the world. If they had workshops or seminars or whatever, I was there, I was going. And 18 months later, I walked out of that finance office for the very last time. And I never looked back, and I became a full-time destination wedding photographer. And I started traveling the world. Oh, I started being paid to go to Hawaii, Australia, the Caribbean, and do something I absolutely love. I started winning awards. I started being published in magazines. This was mind-blowing to me because I don't have a degree. I don't have what I would call natural born talents that I came out of the womb with. I'm from a small town with a single mom. Well, at least my early memories, she was a single mom. And I'm just an ordinary person. But I felt like I was living an extraordinary life because when I looked around at my friends and my community in my town, nobody loved their work and their life as much as I did. And I thought, what is going on here? Because if I can do this, so can they, if they want. So a few years into my photography business, I had this epiphany that the only thing that could be better than living my passion would be helping other people to live theirs. So that's what I do now. It's been a little over 7 years, and I help people who are feeling unfulfilled, maybe that they're not on the path that lights them up the most. I help them uncover what that would be for them that would light you up. And then we start to take steps in the direction of that. Now, there's something that I've noticed is the biggest thing that I have to support my clients with, the biggest thing. And it might sound simple, but it is not easy, especially in the beginning. And that is learning how to make soul-based decisions instead of fear-based ones. Nobody taught us that there was even such a thing as soul-based decisions. We've heard the bumper stickers, follow your heart, and all of these things. And I was like, yeah. I was sharing those things too when I worked my finance job. But I didn't get it, and I didn't do it. I didn't integrate it. So now I have learned that there's actually a nice quick tool that we can all experience right now, if you're open to it. I am so shocked. I have 3 minutes left. And that's all I need. So if you're interested in learning the difference for you, because it's actually a unique experience for every person. So if you'd like to know what your unique experience is in making a soul-aligned decision versus a fear-based decision, we can do this right now. Would anybody be interested? Okay, cool. All right, so if you're comfortable, I'd love for you to close your eyes for a second. I'd love for you to just take a quick scan. Now, this part you don't have to do every time. We're just doing this because this is the first time. Quick scan of how you feel in your body right now. Just a baseline. Cool, this is how my shoulders feel, my back, my stomach, my legs, my feet, my hands, my neck. Just taking a quick scan of how you feel in this moment. And in a second, when I say, I'm going to invite you to ask a question that you already know the answer is yes to. It's a very clear and obvious yes. And once you do that, you're going to do another scan with your eyes closed and see if and what comes up for you. It could be a sensation of, I'll give you a few examples. Sometimes people feel like an elevator goes up for a yes, or a flower feels like it's blossoming in your heart for a yes, or it just feels like a more positive feeling in your body. Some people get like physical sensations, a twitch in their shoulder, they see a color, or they just hear the word yes. So it's different for everybody, and that's why we're doing this individually right now. So the question that you might ask yourself, for example, is my name blank? So go ahead and ask yourself that question and then do that immediate scan. Okay. Keeping the eyes closed, we're going to do this one more time. I want you to ask yourself a question in a moment that you know for certain the answer is no. For example, you might ask, do I live in Timbuktu? And then do a quick scan. Okay, and then when you're ready, opening your eyes. This was a very quick practice and exercise, but just a show of hands, did anyone feel any difference between a yes and a no? Cool. So there's a quote. I tried to look who originally said it. I'm going to credit Robin Sharma, fellow Canadian. I think it might have been him first, but it's that small steps over time yield massive results. Small steps over time yield massive results. When I had that epiphany, I want to be a photographer, I didn't walk out of my office that same day and just throw caution to the wind and quit my job. That would have been too big of a leap, too scary, too quick, too fast. I have bills, I have mortgage, but I did small steps over time, and it yielded a brand new life. So I hope that you will take that feeling with you when you leave today, and that every small decision you make, you ask yourself, is this a soul-aligned yes for me, or is it a no? Thank you so much for having me. My name's Jennifer Jayde. Thank you.